You've done everything right. You updated the resume, sent the applications, sat through the interviews. Maybe you got close. A second round, a final conversation, a promising email that went quiet. And now you're in that strange, uncomfortable place where nothing has moved, and the silence is starting to feel like an answer. You're not sure whether to keep pushing or accept that this particular door isn't opening. That doubt is real. That frustration is real. But what Neville Goddard would tell you is that the problem is not your resume, not the market, and not your qualifications. The problem is where you are living in your imagination. Neville Goddard taught one of the most precise and practical laws ever articulated, the law of assumption. His answer to the unmaterialized job, the offer that hasn't come, the position that seems just out of reach, was not to try harder in the outer world. It was to change your inner state first and hold that change with complete conviction. He taught that imagination is not a tool you use. It is God, the only creative power there is. And the state you occupy in imagination, the assumption you carry about yourself and your life, is always being pressed outward into the facts of your experience. Always, without exception. Neville Goddard read the Bible not as history, but as psychological instruction. When he looked at the verse, "Before they call, I will answer," he saw a precise description of how creation works. The answer, the job, the position, the circumstances, already exists in the imagination of God, which is your imagination. The work is not to earn the result. The work is to move into the state of the person who already has it and to live there now. He was specific about what this means. He said, and this is worth sitting with, you must assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled and then live and act on this assumption. Not imagine it occasionally, not hope for it. Assume it. The assumption is the act. The assumption, held persistently, is what presses through into the world you call real. Here is the mechanics of it plainly stated. The outer world, the inbox, the phone, the hiring manager, is not the cause of your experience. It is the effect of it. Neville Goddard taught that consciousness is the only reality and that the world is a mirror. What you are being in imagination is what the mirror reflects back to you. This means that the job hasn't materialized not because the world is withholding it, but because internally, in the place where creation actually happens, you are still living as the person who is waiting. And the world faithfully produces waiting. Neville Goddard described a man who had been seeking employment for months with no success. What Neville Goddard pointed to was not the man's effort, but his internal state. The man was imagining from the position of someone who needed the job, which is a different inner posture entirely from imagining from the position of someone who has it. The need, when felt vividly and persistently, is what gets reproduced in circumstance. The having, when felt vividly and persistently, is what gets reproduced instead. The state of consciousness from which you look at the world determines the world you see. That is the entire teaching in one line. What Neville Goddard was pointing to here is something most people reverse. They say, "Give me the evidence, and then I will believe." He said the believing is what produces the evidence. The assumption precedes the achievement. Always. Not sometimes. Always. So here's exactly what to do tonight. When you lie down, before sleep, which Neville Goddard identified as one of the most powerful, creative periods available to you, construct a single scene in your imagination, not the interview, not the offer call, the moment after, the moment you are telling someone you trust that you got the job. Feel the relief in your chest. Feel the satisfaction. Let that conversation be real in your body. Hear what you would say. Hear what they say back. Make it sensory, make it specific, and make it short enough that you can repeat it as you drift towards sleep. You are not visualizing at the ceiling. You are relocating your sense of self into the state of the person who already has what you are asking for. Do this with intention, not with strain. Let it feel natural. Sleep from that state. Neville Goddard taught that the bridge of incidents, the specific events that will move the outer world into alignment, will construct itself. Your job is not to figure out how. Your job is to persist in the assumption of the end. The job exists. The state that calls it forth is available to you right now. Begin there.